Welcome to another exciting edition of Cambridge Inside Out.
Exciting,
I'm Robert.
huh? Okay.
Very exciting.
Yeah, Judy Nathans.
Can't you tell from my facial expression?
Yeah, right. Yeah, okay.
I'm Robert.
Judy
All right.
Nathans again, and it's May 8th?
May 8th.
Yes.
That's right.
Can't believe it's May.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Yeah. Very good.
So we're in the middle of budget hearings and city council meetings.
And after missing, I used to, years ago, I used to always go to the budget hearings, and then there was a bunch of years where, honestly, because of the working for a living and the timing of it, because it's in the middle of the day, starting at 9 a.m., it always seemed to conflict with my having to be in a classroom.
Right.
So, but
it's changed these years.
this on Tuesdays I teach starting at 11. So
I can go to a little bit of
so I go for a little bit, and I a week ago I actually made a little public comment.
Yes, you mentioned that last week.
This time I actually went there this morning. I thought I might, but then when I got there, I said I got nothing to say.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I said, why should I? Well, not that it stops other people from talking.
There wasn't that much.
They do a lot of talking. They got a whole
Was there a lot
very
of
little
public
say.
comment?
A few people.
A couple people.
Yeah. And I guess I got there in the when it was already underway. So I think. Oh, I know. Actually,
there was only a couple people.
There were a few sort of the old classics, from the old.
Somebody cannot. So he's got glasses and a beard and a.
Yeah. So there were people who were bringing up some of the housing issues. I think they wanted like a little more money for legal aid or something. Mike Turk, who was like a regular, from the old Cambridge Tenants Union days and rent control days. You don't see him up there very often, but he was there.
That's right.
Wanting to sort of have some resources given to lower income tenants who might need a lawyer to represent them in front of this, that, or the other thing. So, these are good ideas, to be considered by the management, and we'll see where it goes. I don't know that there was any real controversies in the budget here.
So it was Public Works and then Community Development. And then cable TV, and then they took a recess, and then I didn't go back to it. It was public investment and human services.
I mean, they had about 20 departments that could have been pulled.
But these were the ones that were pulled. That's right. We should explain that. It's the ones the councilors want to ask questions on.
So basically, what they do is they say, they poll the councilors and they say, speak now or forever hold your peace. But the councilors have actually been letting the chair know in the days leading up to the meeting which budgets they intend to speak to. Right. And that's good because then you can sort of tip off the department and say, well, you should expect to stay and be ready to answer some questions. And that's just courtesy. And so they only pulled a few. They pulled, 7 of them?
Well, you're talking about last week because I don't
know. No, last week there were... there were 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 budgets pulled. Oh. And there were 7 today.
But there were biggies today. Well, community development, public works.
Some of the big ones, both in terms of positions as well as budget size of the budget. Yeah. Are so last week it would have been traffic and parking and transportation, police and fire.
Oh yeah, that's true.
But then there are other ones that are kind of smaller but important. They're all important.
They're all important.
And this week there were some of the big ones, and they're the ones that are most likely to get pulled. And the ones that got pulled today for discussion were, and by the way, they had a problem with the audio feed, I was told.
No, you don't have to be told. I was home and I turned on the TV and I could see it, but I couldn't hear it. So I put on the computer, which I also watched it on, and it was fine. So it really was, I guess, a Comcast problem. Because, if I could get it on streamed, that means it was being recorded.
Certainly being recorded. So they did announce that they would replay it at 6 o'clock.
But people that don't stream online on their computers can't get it.
So if you just do it through TV and if you find it interesting.
6 o'clock tonight.
6 o'clock tonight. So, anyway, so today the ones they pulled were Public Works, which is always a big one, and Community Development,
$42 million,
which is a big one.
Yeah, okay.
And Cable TV.
Right, $1,700,000.
Which is not a big department, but there are some things that need to be talked about.
Yeah.
Human Services, which is one of the biggest departments as well.
Because that's Veterans and Human Services, right?
Veterans Department is still its own separate thing, but as council committees, they lump them together.
That's what I saw. I think on the scroll. Okay.
So the Women's Commission, which is 2 people, but it's not a big budget. But
was that called? That was
that was pulled.
It was?
Oh yeah. Sumbul Siddiqui had some questions.
Oh, okay.
And then
so I should go back and
a couple
look
of
at that.
others actually asked about it.
Oh, did you go back
actually-
and listen to it?
Actually, one thing that was interesting, between classes,
Yeah.
because I teach at 11 and
So
2.
you went back then? To
No,
this?
no, I
Oh.
just watched it on the computer while I was at my desk
Oh, okay.
at work.
Okay.
And there was actually one thing, I think it was Denise Simmons brought it up about on the Women's Commission, is that
Yeah, tell
as
me,
part of the
I didn't
Women's
hear any of
Commission site, which they do keep up to date and everything's cool, they have this wonderful feature, which is this sort of a historical vignettes of these great women.
Well, they've done a whole, didn't they do a walking tour of the women? Is that what you're talking
No,
about?
well, they have a whole thing on a website, so you
Yeah.
can go there and they have
Okay.
narratives about who these people were. if they
Cambridge women or just women in general?
I think it's Cambridge women
Okay,
primarily.
yeah.
So, and that's not is kept up as well as it could be. And Denise Simmons asked, is this a matter of resources? And it was largely done with volunteer effort, and some people are able to do it sometimes, but not
Right.
other times. So
Right.
there was a special request, and Denise was very nice. She says, I'm not going to be asking you to change the budgets, that's not here, but
Yeah.
it would be nice if you do that. And Louis DePasquale stepped right up,
Really?
right real time, and said, we'll take care of that. So that would be great, because there are actually a few projects that have been proposed either via city council order or initiative within departments over the years that are just wonderful resources. One is that,
Okay.
and
Which wouldn't be a big expense if they had to hire someone.
they might, just or
Or
you
a
can
web
just
designer, someone, give them the
Well, they
information,
have-
have them design it.
they have that in there, but the thing
Oh.
is you actually have to gather the information. You got
Right,
to
well
get
then
the
it's
narratives.
inputting the data.
Yeah, it can be, but it's.
I'm just saying, it's not a lot of money for a
Right.
person, if a person would do
Well,
that.
they made a point is that some of the people who would be telling the stories about who these people were are getting old.
Oh, so
and
one would wanna do interviewing
You
for
really want to be doing some of these things to
them.
sort of capture it.
CCTV, there you go.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's a wonderful resource,
yeah.
And I've gone on some of the walks that they held, with the Women's Commission.
Well, I know
and
they
they're great.
did make a walking tour, I think that was one of the things, while of the
I've gone on,
project.
yeah.
Right, so then maybe
Yeah.
this grew out of that.
So,
too.
so that'd be great. And that's just one example. There's actually another one that I think it was a city council order from David Marr a while back. It said, when you go around the city and you see these little signposts that say, Joe Blow Square, well, who was that person?
Oh, yeah.
And they wanted to I think there was several ideas, and I don't know how many of this has been carried out, but
Yeah,
for those of you who use cell phones, you could actually do a little swipe of the thing, because it would have one of those funny codes on it, and then you would
the
get,
squares have them? No.
well, that was the idea.
The idea, the square
whether
is
the-
pretty high up sign, anyway,
Well, you
but
put
the
it on the
idea is
post.
that you would put one of,
Yeah.
a scan or something.
Yeah, and you could just put it right on the post, so if somebody's walking
Yeah.
by, they go, who was that person? And you
Mhm.
could just do it, right?
Right,
They were going to make a map. I think they did. I don't know if they kept it up.
an
or carried it through.
interactive tour.
But even
whatever you
a
call it,
website where in fact you just zoom
Mhm.
in and then you click on that square and it would tell you about the person who's being
Yeah.
commemorated
It's,
there.
I mean, it's all, right, it's all great.
It's one of the great
Right.
joys of living in a historic city.
Right,
know,
but you,
is
and
got
also
history
living in a
everywhere.
very tech savvy city, but you still need someone to put that all together, so.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes it's initiatives are great when they're first initiated, and then often they fail in the execution.
But it's also nice if there's some, actual words at a monument, because a lot of people aren't gonna scan their iPhones or
Right.
have them to do that.
Yeah, they sometimes on the little squares they'll say something like World War II veteran or
Yeah, well, the
baseball
squares,
star
yeah,
or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
But there's just so much you could put on the sign. So the more the better.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
it can all be done.
Yeah. So anyway, so
More
that did come up.
stuff.
So that wasn't a big budget, but it was a nice, interesting
Okay,
interchange.
yeah, I didn't see that one.
Right, and then it was about revenue section, public investment, which I don't think they
Okay.
talked too much about. It,
That,
but it's
I,
important.
can you explain, I thought the figure I saw on the TV said 523 million, is that possible for public investment, was that a mistake? That seems like the
That
whole
is a
budget.
mistake. The total
I was gonna
Yeah.
say, that's
Okay.
the whole budget, isn't it?
when that would be so
Well,
the-
they had it under public investment, I swear, and it said
I-
public investment meant, in fact, they didn't even spell it right.
you know what it
Anyway.
is probably. It's probably when you
Okay.
look at the whole
Thank
budget
you.
summary.
Alright,
When you get down to after the last item,
it's probably gives you the whole.
then they have city
So
total.
what,
and
do you
somebody
remember the
entered
total
wrong.
for public investment?
It's
It
about
was-
109 million. I think.
Oh, that's pretty high.
It is pretty big.
109 million. That's
yeah,
more
and
than DPW.
Yeah, it's
and more than community development.
But no,
yes.
no, but you're talking about operating funds versus capital investment. And in fact, of that 109 million, actually,
can you explain that to me? What public investment is?
Public investment basically is when you have to repair roads, build roads, do the city
so you really need
municipal
to
services
almost
plan.
Do planning in case.
Right. So in other words, you're not paying salaries and things like that.
So you put enough in there to cover something that might come up, like you might have a big storm or something. You'd have to fix something. Is that what you're talking
or if you're
about?
building a new school building. That's capital projects.
Okay, so that's why it's so big. All right.
Right, and that as contrasted with paying.
Why don't they
teacher
call
salaries.
it capital projects instead of
They
public
do.
investment?
Well, it's just a matter of just where in the budget it's called, but they do put. Well, it's not all just capital projects. It could also be, as was pointed out during the public works discussion this morning, when they buy, when they're providing toters and bins for. When this fall they'll go into doing a commercial recycling availability.
It's grants from the state.
Right, you can get some combination of grants, but also the city will have to cough up maybe if they have to put up $50,000 or $25,000 to get bins to distribute. That's a capital cost, so that would show up to there. Now, of the 100, whatever, I think it's something on the tune of about 109 million.
Yeah, I didn't. Obviously, I didn't see it. I saw 500 something. So.
Right. But in that, of that 109-ish million, if I got it right, 88.15 million is bonded. So that's where in addition to the city's, the budgets that they're passing, there's also about 5 or 6 of these loan authorizations that the city council has to vote. The largest of which is there's a $61.5 million one for various water pollution abatement projects. So basically, when they're doing sewer projects all around the city, which is not cheap, and there's a lot of other things that go on when you're digging up the streets.
So who is the budget director? Is it
David Kale?
Okay, and then who is the woman that? There was a woman that I can't know her name. She was on Alana and Sumble's podcast. She's the assistant budget director. Is that?
I should know, but it's
anyway. She explained some of what that means, and that's very because some people say, oh, it's just money that the city has. No, it's money from all kinds of sources.
I have to say it takes a while to understand how to read a budget book.
No kidding.
It's not a snap.
Well, there's budget details books. There's the budget. There's like different. Also documents, right?
Yeah, and unless you know exactly how to read it, you might not get the right idea.
Yeah.
So, for example, if I can find this in here, so in the message from the city manager, they said they're putting up some large money. The capital budget is 105.4 million.
Okay.
But if you look at the budget, it would look like it's about 20 million. And the reason is that the amount that they float bonds for, that's long-term lawn authorizations. So that's not money that's being appropriated right there. It's money they're borrowing, and where the payment comes up is when they're paying off the debt service.
Yeah, one would have to understand that, because otherwise you'd think that we're just
I can do math, and I'll tell you, I get kind of perplexed by this until I do the.
All right.
I mean, just like when I spoke at the budget hearing last week, I was making the point that if you would look, for example, at the city council budget, you'd swear there were only 2 people being paid.
The way they describe, right?
Because the city councilors who are paid,
it's a little deceiving,
right? Their salaries are included in the budget amount, but in terms of positions, they're not included.
Well, you'd have to look at another document to find that. That's because it is there, but it's another document. It isn't. It's not. I don't know if it's online. It's supposed to be online.
Yeah, I just thought they don't have to put a lot more effort into these things, but just sort of in addition, just sort of say, oh yeah, by the way, and we also have X number of
counselor salaries,
full-time equivalents.
Right.
So there are some things that you could do for that. But anyway, it was interesting, and I'll tell you, it was after the city council meeting last night. I hung around a little bit later, and I was chatting with Denise Simmons and then Craig Kelly. And here I am. I was like recycling hotline for 5 years. I was like the Shell answer man.
Yeah.
And so Craig and I were talking about when we pick up the organics, we're supposed to say the compost, but it's the organics collection at the curb. What happens to it? You might know.
Wait, are you asking? You don't know? They have been given this
gets on it. I'm
It goes, the Save That Stuff picks it up. They built this huge, think of it as this huge garbage disposal with waste management at their site.
right.
It's called a slurry. Goes
make
in
the slurry.
there. That's all gets put into a long tanker
That's
once
right.
a week that goes to the Greater Lawrence Water District.
That's right. And
Yeah.
I didn't know that because
Well,
You
you
know-
knew it in your head somehow, but you have so
I
many
might
other
have
things in
heard
your
it.
head.
I know
Yeah.
it's my mind's a
So
war.
it is a.
I
It
think
doesn't go to a farm.
I think that
that's-
where we were getting it confused is that
I
there
can't.
was
I'm surprised Craig didn't know.
but there was a proposal a few
Yeah.
years back that if they had some additional capacity at the MWRA facility at Deer Island,
Oh, of course, but,
Then
but
but
exactly
it didn't happen.
Well,
It
but
may
didn't-
happen someday, but
Well, it didn't happen because Winthrop, the city, just as it would have
can't
happened in
carry it
Cambridge,
through.
didn't want more trucks going
Going
to
through
their
the streets,
facility.
right.
They have the capacity. They, those
Yep.
big eggshell things.
Yep.
They have it there. That's exactly what they're doing. It's the same kind of facility at Greater Lawrence, but we could
Right.
get it up there without
so
people
but the
complaining.
confusion was that there
Yes.
was a story that if it was processed through there, you'd actually push the slurry through a pipeline over to another facility
Well,
which
it is still that
is
is.
south of there.
But that's still what they're doing. I mean, they are converting sludge or whatever into pellets.
Right,
and
but
it is
they're doing
going
it up
through a
in-
pipe. No, in
really?
Deer Island, it's going out somewhere else.
Oh no, but that's the
The idea is that
from
it's
waste
still
treatment.
right.
But that's not has nothing to do with our organics collection.
No, but they would do the same thing if it was in another digester. It would still go through a pipeline to some other location as a biosol or
Right.
something.
Right,
It's the same process, only it's a different location.
right, but I don't know that the facility in Lawrence has that.
Oh no, you know what they're doing with it is it's powering their own facility.
The fuel that is
Well,
generated,
whatever,
the methane
yeah,
that's
and plus
generated.
there is going to be solid pellets, whatever, and
Yeah.
that isn't shipped because they're not on an island. So that's mainly whatever they produce is going to go out by truck.
Right.
The difference in Deer Island is that was the easiest way to get it out to
Yeah.
Quincy
yeah.
or somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
But
So anyway, so I was a little embarrassed that the
Yeah, I
guy who
wish
used
I
to
had
know
been
all the
around.
answers
Yeah.
about compost, whatever, and I was absolutely flat.
so where did he think it was going?
There was, I think it was sort of some old memories about
Okay,
going
'cause I
through
think
the
some of the
MWRA
councils
facility.
do know. No, there's been that's what the state wanted, and they still want it, but there's a
Right.
moratorium. They can't do
Right.
it.
Also, there was some confusion about where in Charlestown, because we take our recyclables to Charlestown, right, for Casella.
This
But
is
this
Save
is-
That Stuff,
but
where
this is
actually has
Yeah.
been picking up commercial
Right.
compost for years.
Right.
It started a while ago. I mean, that's where.
Yeah.
So, all right.
So anyway, so I learned something.
There was a tour at the end of April. I mean,
I want to do that tour.
Well, it'll be another one. There was
Yeah.
a tour of the particular of that facility, and you could see the piles of all the compost. But anyway, okay.
I think I actually also want to do the tour of Deer Island. And
That
I
that
missed
you
out
have
on
to
that.
send in your passport,
I
your
know,
license,
I know.
everything. I did that.
But
Oh,
Craig-
you missed it with Captain
Craig said
Judy.
he
Yeah.
did it, but he didn't have to do any of that.
Well, because he's an ex-Marine, maybe.
Really?
I don't know. I'm just guessing. Maybe
Well, I
because
bet
he's already
maybe-
got military clearance. I don't know.
They might have loosened up the restrictions.
Well, you
recently,
go
I don't
find
know.
out because that's it. They have a guy there
I'd
who's
like to
still
do
there.
it.
He's fascinating. He gives an hour talk. You'd think it would be boring, but it's like, whoa, you learn everything.
Yeah, the last time I
about
sort of
this.
came up close in there was I think I was on a boat with Bruce
Oh,
Berman,
yeah.
who's like the harbor master for Save Our,
Yeah,
what's his name? Save Our Harbor.
save the harbor,
Save the harbor.
seals.
Save the harbor. Save the bay. That's it, right?
Okay.
So.
No, it's very interesting. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Deer Island. But anyway.
So anyway, I didn't see all the budget stuff today, but it was kind of interesting. I remember when Brian Murphy was first talking about running for city council. He met with me and I said, "You want to learn how the city really runs? Go to the budget hearings and talk to some people." And sure enough, he actually did it. And then a few years later, he was elected, and then he became chair of the budget, the finance committee.
Right.
He was running those hearings. So I thought that was a kind of a nice outcome.
But speaking of compost, that did come up under the DPW discussion today.
Yes, it did.
People asked about
Yeah.
the compost pickup. Zondervan.
Yep. Yeah.
And,
Anyway, so that was
Yeah.
interesting. I enjoyed myself.
yeah.
You know, those are the things that float my boat right there.
Yeah.
Now, we also had a city council meeting last night.
Yeah.
You know,
I was
and by the
watching
way,
the Celtics game, but I did watch it today, the city council meeting.
actually, I think at one point
I heard that, yes.
When the
governor,
mayor
yeah.
mentioned to the commissioner,
Barb,
the police
he's from
commissioner
Philly, right.
in Philly, that the Celtics are up by 2 points.
Yeah,
well,
that lasted about 3 minutes.
that's about right.
Because
yeah.
I watched the whole game with
Yeah.
my daughter, and I mean, I kept saying they need to win this, Philadelphia, because they want to show face. So.
Yeah.
Wednesday night, though.
Yeah.
Big game.
Now, speaking of Wednesday, well, that means whenever they start, I'm not sure, but there is one more budget
at a
hearing.
more reasonable hour.
Yeah, the one more budget hearing is
same
tomorrow.
Time, 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
That's the schools.
School department budget. That tends not to last super long because it's fundamentally one department, right? But it's a big one.
Have you gone to those before?
I have, but not in a good long while. I'm sort of toying with the idea of maybe popping by.
Yeah, me too. I'm wondering, is that one televised? I think it might be.
I believe that one is televised.
Okay, then I'm just gonna watch it.
But they're doing it over at.
No, they're doing it at Sullivan.
They are doing it at Sullivan.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I saw that.
Yeah, you know, I mean, the school department is something I've never fully understood the intricacies of it all. I know a lot more about city and city department stuff, but it's always been just a little off of my out of my wheelhouse.
I haven't even looked at budget details, so I don't know what I would learn by listening, but I guess
6 o'clock.
What the concerns are.
Yeah, there was actually I did get a request because I put together some of the figures about budgets over the last 25 or so years, number of positions, and then
you got a request from whom?
School committee member Emily Dexter, saying thanks, that's great, and by the way, now can you go do the same with the school department? And I thought, no good deed goes unpunished, right?
Did you?
I said no. Honestly, there are things I can do with relative ease. So
but you don't have all the figures for the school.
I don't have those budgets. Yeah. I had the books for the city going back since the beginning of time, but I never gathered them for the school department, and I would really
somebody you'd think within the school department would have that information.
If you requested, somebody could just give it right back to you. Sure. Yeah. I mean, I was kind of interested because there have been these. I mean, the reason why I was doing these and we were showing some of the figures here last week.
Right.
Was that there have been these sort of moments in time where things changed. Like, for example, if you look around 94, question 9, rent control had 25 employees, drops to 0.
Right.
But then there's a jump in the manager's office subsequently and a reshaping of how the community development department did its business.
Which makes sense because,
Well, they shifted, honestly. Right. They were largely more economic development. And then housing became this central theme.
That's interesting, yeah.
That's when Susan Schlesinger became the head.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so you can sort of see these real big changes that happen. There were other ones when I think I mentioned about the Cambridge Environmental Program. I don't know if we talked about that last week.
I don't remember.
There was a big controversy over the what was then known as the interim parking freeze. And there were threats that since the city was supposedly not in compliance and they had done a settlement with the Cambridge Citizens for Livable Neighborhoods. But the thing is that it was actually very difficult to open up commercial interest in the city, which the city really desperately wanted to do for tax-based purposes. And and besides, the businesses were saying, well, we're just going to move over to Boston. And a lot of what was going to happen in Kendall Square wouldn't have happened if that had remained the way it was. So they wanted to change things away from the old settlement of this parking freeze, the details of which let's not get into here. But so they wanted to move toward this vehicle trip reduction ordinance mechanism as part of the state implementation plan for the Clean Air Act, which was federal. So you had to file with the state, file with the feds, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the thing is that if the city would have misstep even a little bit, then groups like the Conservation Law Foundation were just going to file lawsuits against us. So it was very, very delicate. So what happened is that they brought Liz Epstein, who was from the Conservation Commission, had moved her into the manager's office and created this Cambridge Environmental Program, which was based on a report from Frank Duhay, actually. And they held their cards close because this was delicate. And after a few years, they moved toward the vehicle trip reduction ordinance, which is what the rule is today. This is, by the way, when the bike lanes started appearing because they all had to be part of our showing.
So what did that exactly say? put it simply, the trip reduction?
Basically, it says rather than having a strict parking freeze, we simply have to show that we are doing everything humanly possible to encourage so-called alternative transportation, and reduce the use of single occupancy vehicles, and do a lot more.
And that was accepted?
Yes, yeah, and so that became the rule. But the thing is, so it had to be done real close, and I think Bob Healy was absolutely right to think of it that way. But then eventually it got regularized, they spun it off, and it became the Division of Transportation and Environmental Planning within the Community Development Department.
Oh.
So when I look at these budget books, they do tell a story about the fact that there was something delicate. The manager's office grew positions for a while, and then moved it regularized it, put it into a department, and that's where it is to this day. So right now, the manager's office...
So why didn't it go into traffic and parking?
Because
I guess because it was more environmental issue than a parking issue.
And honestly, depending on who the personnel in the traffic department was at the time, they might not have embraced the same agenda.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So sometimes that's just the way you got to do it, right?
Well, it was smart, whatever they did, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. In an ideal world, we should sort of be converging back toward having all traffic transportation things all being more unified.
Yeah.
Kind of just, and I think we're sort of moving in that direction.
Yeah.
Hard to say.
Yeah.
But the manager's office budget right now actually has a budget, not budget, but the number of positions has swelled to an all-time high. It's like 14 or 15.
Look at all the stuff they're asked to do.
Years ago it was like 6. Yeah, but the thing is, so they just give it to departments, right?
Well,
right now it's all within the manager's office.
That's interesting. Maybe because he was formerly a budget person, maybe he wants to keep it under his umbrella.
For the short term.
For the short term,
right?
Yeah.
So they have
you can look at it better.
There's like a housing ombudsman.
True.
There's a inclusionary zoning planner or whatever. So I think eventually those things will get spun off into the other departments, and the managers will settle back into what it is. But so you got to look at the long view sometimes. So anyway, I find this stuff pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So how do you run a city?
Yeah. And the whole thing about the parking reduction and the history of that is a good segue into our next summit, which we'll be talking about, because I've spent a lot of time on the parking.
Yeah, so we should definitely talk about that, because that is related.
The policy order number 5. Yeah.
See you in a couple minutes.